Okay, I do believe we might be live. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Sunday morning live stream. It's going to be a super chilled stream today. We're going to be programming some patches from scratch with the Medusa hybrid synthesizer from Polyend. Um, if there's anyone in the chat right now, if you can just let me know that my voice is coming through clear, that'd be awesome. I would really appreciate it. What we're going to do is we're going to start by checking out a few presets that I've programmed this week for the Medusa. We'll go ahead and just jump right in. So it's going to get loud in about 3, 2, 1. Hey, thanks, Connor. I appreciate that. This is just kind of a fun arpeggio. It's got a lot of modulation on it, a lot of filter movement in the sound. Let me go ahead and load up another preset here. This one is a chords patch that I put together. I've called this one Autumn Skies. Check this out. Hey, what's happening, Big John? Appreciate you tuning in. Now, the Polyend Medusa does not have any effects built in, so there's no like built-in reverb, delay, chorus, flanger, phaser, all that kind of stuff. There's no effects built in. So today I've got the Eventide black hole pedal out, so we can get a little bit of extra, effect sound on some of these patches. Sounds a little bit nice with some reverb on these chords. Got a lot of modulation happening on these chords as well. I really like a lot of modulation and LFOs happening inside of my patches. All right, let me load up another one here. I believe this is also another chords preset. Sounds really nice with some extra reverb as well. One of the things that I'm really liking about the Medusa is there's like a tiny little bit of grit and character to these sounds that I'm not getting out of a lot of the other synthesizers that I'm using these days. What we've got here is we've got a 6 oscillator synthesizer. We've got 3 analog oscillators, 3 digital oscillators, and we also have the ability to tune in some digital wavetables, which we're going to be exploring in just a little bit as well. Let me load up another one of the patches that I've done this week. I believe this is another chords patch. Yeah. Gonna add a little bit more of the reverb from Black Hole on this one. One of the reasons that I'm doing a bunch of like chord progression patches is I've recently picked up a vintage Roland SP303 sampler, and I'm looking to create like some lo-fi chords and like deep house and house music and dub techno style chords and stuff with like a little bit of that lo-fi sauce that we get with something like the Roland SP03. So in creating a whole bunch of new patches that have chords and chord progressions in them, it's going to give me content to sample into that and then use for lots of different upcoming projects I'm really excited about. Hey, what's happening, Kumquat? Thanks for tuning in. All right. Let's check out another patch that I've got finished already. I believe this is an effects patch. Yeah. This is sort of like some dark, bassy tom action that I think might be useful for techno here. It's a really neat sort of built-in filter movement on this patch here. In fact, if I play the patch, you hear that we almost have like a delay sound built in. But again, there's no effects in the Medusa. So what I'm actually doing is pinging the filter here to create that sort of, you know, ding there. Really drown this in reverb from the Eventide black hole pedal if we want. Oh. All right, but the goal today isn't just to drown everything in reverb. Let me go ahead and load up the next patch that's finished already. This is another chords patch that I programmed out. I've been calling this one Clear Stream. Put a little more reverb on this. Almost like an EDM style chords here. You get that filter movement built in. Kind of a happy vibe on that one. Next, we've got another effects patch that I think is pretty neat. Let's check this one out. This one could be really useful if you added like a stomping techno kick, right? Oh my goodness, and maybe sidechained that to the kick drum. I've got one more that I finished last night, which is sort of like an arpeggio preset, and let's take a listen to what that sounds like. Hey, what's happening, Grant? Thanks for tuning in. I really like the timbre on this particular patch. I'm using one of the inbuilt wave tables, so it's not just like an analog square wave per se, but an actual wave table that we can get some pitch, not pitch movement, but like timbre modulation on. Almost like that 4-minute kind of sound. Crank that in reverb if we want. So the Medusa doesn't let me like name patches when I save patches. We're just sort of, you know, saving the patches to the individual pads in the grid is how they do that. So there are 64 pads on this grid here, which is allowing me to save 64 patches inside of a bank. There are 2 banks inside of the Medusa, so I'm filling up bank B with all of my custom patches at this time. And I'm using like just the old-fashioned pen and paper to write down like the names of the patches and whatnot so that I can, you know, keep track of what I'm actually doing and which pads actually have presets in them. I've got a few notes for some patches that I might like to try to program today. And what I think we're going to do first is I think we're going to try to do a really simple type of bass arpeggio that plays back in a random note order. Okay, so let's see if we can make that happen. Hey, what's happening, Fade Man? Thanks for tuning in. Also, if anyone has any questions along the way today, just feel free to drop those in the chat, whether they be, you know, Medusa sound patch related, or whether they be, you know, just music making related in general. Just drop those in the chat and I'll do my best to answer those. So let's go ahead and start with like a blank patch today. I've got this patch down at the bottom, B63 kind of as like my default patch. And let me go ahead and just bring all of the volumes down on all 6 oscillators so that we're not hearing anything to begin with. And my favorite waveform is the square waveform. So I think what we're going to do is try to create like just a really simple square wave bass here. And all I need to do to get started is just turn up the volume on one of these oscillators. We're going to start with the analog oscillator number 1. We're just hearing one oscillator now. I'm going to go ahead and click off the black hole reverb so that we're just hearing the Medusa. I'm also going to put this into mono mode here. We have a mono mode, which will allow us to play all 6 oscillators at the same time, but in a mono synth fashion. So we can't hold chords in the mono mode, just one note at a time, but we can get some pretty thick sounds in this mono mode. In the polyphonic 1 mode, we get to use 3 individual notes, and it doubles up the oscillators on that. So you get, 3 notes from the analog oscillator and 3 notes from the digital oscillator for some really thick sounds. We're not in a scale yet, so let's go ahead and put us into a scale mode. Let's go ahead and click scale here, and I'm just going to scroll down. My favorite key to write in is the key of F pentatonic minor. So I'm going to set the scale to the pentatonic minor scale. I'm going to go in and I'm going to set the root note here to F2. And now the grid will be in the key, the scale rather, of F pentatonic minor. Okay, so we can't like hit a note out of key there. And what I want to do is, let's see here, I want to change the layout of the grid a little bit. So I'm going to go up to layout, and I'm just going to change it here so it's a little bit easier for me to follow. These are octaves, so we go. Okay, but it's always staying in the key now of F minor pentatonic. What we've got here is a nice low F that I can use for like a bass. Maybe go into the amplitude envelope here. And let's see, maybe do a little bit of decay on this so that we've got a little bit more of a plucked sound over here on the envelope shape. I like that when we adjust the envelope that we get to see a visual representation of that here. I don't know how well that's coming through on the live stream, but we get a visual representation of the envelope. We have 5 built-in envelopes, one that's dedicated to the amplitude of our sounds, one that's dedicated to the filter movement of our sounds, and then we have 3 assignable envelopes that we can assign to pretty much anything inside of the Medusa. We also have 5 LFOs, so we can really get a lot of modulation happening inside of our patches as well, which is something that I'm really keen on. Okay, so what let's do here is I just want to get a tiny little bit of release on this sound here, and maybe we'll filter it down by default just a little bit. Give it a tiny little bit of resonance maybe by default as well. Okay, so you can kind of hear the range of movement there. If I turn the resonance way up, we get a lot more of a acidic type of filter sound. We also have a 2-pole low-pass filter, and we have a 4-pole low-pass filter, and we have a high-pass filter. But what I want to do is maybe assign a little bit of the filter envelope to our sound here. Probably okay for now. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to create an arpeggio, like a bass arpeggio here, that's going to play back the notes in the arpeggio in random order. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to go into the preset menu here where I can adjust all of these things, like the sequence length, for instance. That's the first thing we're going to do. We're going to set the length of the sequence. It can be anywhere from like just a 1-step sequence all the way to a 64-step sequence. So we can have like polyrhythmic sequences if we want. I'm just going to have this one be a 5-step sequence to start off with. And we can tell it what notes we want to be in our sequence, like really easily. All I need to do is, there's actually 2 modes that these pads over here, these the grid layout of pads can function in. This mode here is let's see, is the grid mode, which is allowing us to see the actual sequence and whatnot. And then if we get, why is that not? What am I doing wrong here? Did I not set the sequence? There we go. Okay, so this mode here is our regular play mode where we can actually, play the notes that we want, and they're sticking to the scale that we've set up here. But we also have this grid page, which is showing us, the actual sequence, and here I can set, the sequence to 5. I'm not sure why it's lighting up. I think maybe I need to clear what's in the grid currently though. So let's do that. I'm going to hit record, hold and clear all steps. Okay, cool. Then I'm going to set the sequence length. It seems to remember that I want it to 5. Fantastic. I also want to do, I should have done this right as we get started. I want to do a little disclaimer in that I'm a little bit, new to the workflow of the Medusa. I've had it for some time, but I haven't really been programming my own sounds with it until just this week. So I'm certainly not like, an expert level user on this box that knows like every single in and out of the workflow and all of the details. I'm more of a beginner to intermediate level programmer on this machine at this time. All right. So, what I want to do is I want to tell the sequence what notes I'd like to actually play. And so, if I'm in the play mode here, I'm gonna get out of record mode, find out what we're gonna use. Yeah. Cool. So what I'm going to do is these are the first 5 notes in the scale of F minor pentatonic. I'm just going to hit record, and I'm just going to tap these notes in one at a time. And each time I hit a note, it moves to a different step. And it knows that it was a 5-step sequence because I put that in previously. Now I can go out of record mode and go back into that grid mode. And we'll actually see now if I press these notes in grid mode, there's our, the 5 notes that I just put in. But what I want to do is I want these, actually before I do that I can show you, if I just hit play, right? There's the pattern that we just created, just 5 notes, But what I wanted to do is I wanted to play back these notes in random order so that the sequence is kind of an ever-changing, ever-evolving type of sequence. I can go into the sequence mode here, and now I can tell it that, when we play the sequence, it should play it forward, backwards, ping pong, so back and forth, or in a random fashion. And that's what I'm looking for. So I've set it to random. And now when I press play, it's going to randomly select one of those 5 notes to play back in our sequence. Yes, Medusa is made from Polyend, the same folks who make the Polyend tracker. So we're doing pretty good here. What I want to do is start affecting the amplitude and the filter envelope settings to get the sound a little bit more like what I'm looking for. In fact, before we do that, I think that the pitch of our sound is a little bit high because I'm trying to create a bass patch at this time. So if I go back into the play mode here and I change the octave of the oscillator that we're affecting, what am I in the digital? Yes, I am. Okay, if I make sure that we're in the, see there's a button here that says octave and it says digital. If I click this button and it's highlighted, then I'm affecting the digital oscillators, these 3 oscillators. And if I click this button so that it's not highlighted, now I'm affecting the analog oscillators, which is what I want to be affecting. We're only hearing just one oscillator right now in this patch. It's the analog oscillator number 1. All the other volumes are down. So if I change the octave of that oscillator, we get a much more lower, type of pitch here. It's a little bit chewy. not getting exactly the type of envelope that I'm looking for. So I'm gonna just, just minimize that envelope and try again. I think we're gonna, before I do that, I think we're gonna change the tempo of this patch because I think that might have something to do with why it's not necessarily playing back the way that I am anticipating. And yeah, our tempo is a little bit slow. I'm gonna go ahead and roll this up to like a more, techno-friendly tempo of like 124, and we're gonna go ahead and keep working with these envelopes. Yeah. Oh, I see why. I'm not in the mono mode that I want to be in. I was in the poly 1 mode, which explains completely why the envelope wasn't functioning as I was expecting. So that's just user error there. I just needed to make sure that I have the play mode in the right mode for the type of patch that I'm trying to create. And because this is like a bass arpeggio patch, I definitely want the Medusa to be in that mono mode. Fantastic. Let's go ahead and mess with these envelopes a little more and see if I can't actually dial this in this time. Still a little bit not what I'm... Having trouble with this envelope today. That's okay. Just gonna put a little tiny bit of the black hole reverb on, just a little tiny bit, so we get a little bit of ambience on the patch that we're creating. Oh, that's amount to the amplitude. All right, I want the filter envelope. Just adjusting how much filter envelope we're sending to the filter now. Trying to get this a little bit acidic, as you can hear. If we were to crank up the reverb on this, we start getting that dark tunnel vibe there. I'm going to turn that reverb back down. And what might be nice is that if we could get some movement happening in this patch. So we've done a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and save the patch at this time. This is my first open slot in this bank. So we're going to go save. Okay, preset saved. Fantastic. Now let's see here. What I'd like to do is get a little bit of movement happening on this filter. So what we can do is we can assign like one of our LFOs to that filter. I can hold the LFO down. It's off by default, and I can just move this cutoff knob ever so slightly, and it's now assigned that LFO to our cutoff. I can turn the LFO on by double tapping on it, and it turns the light on here. Now we can either have this synced to our tempo, or we can have it be like a free running LFO. I can change the wave shape, and I can change the amount of LFO, like how much we're moving this filter knob here. I just want it to be a subtle amount, and I just want it to be a really smooth modulation as well, like with the sine wave here. We can hear what we're doing if I crank the amount up right off the jump here. So we can see, really hear how fast it's moving that filter or how slow. And again, I just want this to be a very gentle amount of filter movement here. I can't get these envelopes to be exactly like what I'm looking for today. It's always the way, it's like I had a blast programming this synth this week, and everything is working as expected. The second that I get on a live stream and start trying to do the very first patch, the envelopes are not exactly doing what I want them to do. That just sort of is what it is, you know what I mean? I think that's the beauty of the live stream. All right. Okay, so what I think I'm going to do, this patch is just not doing what I want it to do at this time. And rather than just continuously struggle with this particular patch and what, I'm hearing in my head and then what I'm able to actually create, I think we're just going to go ahead and move forward onto a different type of patch today. So maybe I can get, a little bit more air under my wings as we get started here, per se. All right. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. What we're going to do, I think, is try to create like a polyphonic patch that's playing some chords. Okay, so let's go ahead and give that a go. What I'm going to do is we're going to load sort of like my default initialized patch here. And let's see, if I bring these oscillators up, all 6 oscillators, and I make sure that we're in the polyphony 2 play mode, now I should be able to play, 6 different notes at the same time on the Medusa. And what I want to do is I've actually got let's see if I change cameras here. I can show you real quick. I've got a program that I'm using in Ableton Live over here, and it's from Plugin Boutique, and it's called Scalar, and it basically is a chord progression helper tool. And basically, I've got it MIDI'd up currently to the Medusa, and I've got a chord progression here. Let me turn the volume down just a bit. And I figure what we can try to do today is try to use that chord progression to create a polyphonic chord patch here in the Medusa. So let's go ahead and give this a go. What I want to do first is I just want to affect the amplitude envelope, the amplitude envelope a tiny little bit here and get it into more of like a pad shape, hopefully. And let's see here. Now, if I play these chords, it's very loud, sorry. Okay, cool. Let's go with that for now. What I want to do is I want to make sure that we have a 64 note pattern. So let's see here. We can go into sequence length. Yes, we are in 64. And I want to make sure that we're currently not in a scale mode. So I'm going to go scale and make sure it says no scale. That way, if I play like an F major 7 or whatever, it, no matter what scale we're in, it's going to play that F major 7, for example. I just need to hit record now, and now I can trigger those chords and I can record them in. The cursor basically is lit up on whatever step we are going to record a note on, and I can scroll this, cursor around to put the MIDI information, the chords, onto any of those 64 steps that I want. So we're just going to do this in a really simple way to start off with. Here's our very first chord. I'm just going to I'm going to trigger the MIDI from Ableton, and it's put that on our very first step. Now I'm just going to scroll down to about a measure, like 16 steps beneath that, and I'm going to trigger the second chord. Okay, now I'm going to go and we're going to scroll to another bar position in the sequence. I'm going to hit another chord, and we're going to do that same thing for the last bar of our sequence. And I'm going to hit a chord there. I think I entered the wrong chord on this one, so I'm going to enter it again and make sure I get the right one. Okay, so I've got 4 chords here, and if I go to the grid mode, actually I think we need to clear this out before I do that, is the thing. Yeah, let's do that. So I'm going to go, because I don't want it to think there's information where there isn't yet. So I'm just going to clear this grid out. We're going to hit in record mode, I'm going to hit hold and clear, and then I'm going to choose clear all steps, not clear selected steps. And then we're going to enter those chords again. So if I get back into, play mode, and I'm in record mode in play mode, I hope this is making any sense. This is one of the reasons why it took me so long to kind of get to grips with the Medusa, is we go back and forth between this grid mode and this play mode, and depending on which mode you're in, the pads, are different function per se. Okay, but we're in the play mode. I've got the sequence empty, and I just want to put these chords in again. So here's our first chord, and then put the cursor where I want the second chord, and there's our second chord. Put the cursor where I want our third chord here, tap that third chord, and then put the cursor where I want our fourth chord, and trigger that MIDI from that. Now, if I leave record mode and just play, you can see that we've recorded those chords in, right? But they're really short. You can bring up the release on these. Start trying to actually shape this envelope a little bit better for more of like a chord stab sound. Getting there. Okay, that's sounding pretty nice. What I'm going to do then is we're going to go ahead and save what we've created on this patch so far into the first empty slot here. I'm going to go ahead and just quickly label that I started an ARP here, and that I'm going to quickly label that I'm putting a chords patch here. All right. So now we've got that saved, and what I want to do is I want to, currently we're using 6 oscillators to make this chord. We're using all 3 of the analog oscillators and all 3 of the digital oscillators. It might be nice if we could detune the oscillators from each other and make the sound a little bit sort of chorusy. Let me show you what I mean by that. Actually, let me go ahead and turn the reverb up on the black hole just a little bit. We can just get a little bit more texture in what we're creating here. Cool, that sounds better. What I want to do is I just want to fine-tune these sounds a little bit so that they're a little bit detuned from each other, just gently. And I'm going to do the same thing with the digital oscillators. Maybe a little bit less. Maybe a little bit more. No, that's too much. All right. All right, I think that's sounding all right. I'm going to go ahead and bring the attack up on our amplitude just the tiniest little bit, so it's not quite as strong of an attack sound, and a little bit softer when this sound hits, and I mean really subtle. I'm trying to get this attack up to 1, basically. There we go. Nice. Maybe bring this down a little still. Still working that envelope a little bit. All right, we're getting there. Now, we don't have any filter movement happening in this sound at all. So if I play it and then adjust the filter, we can really filter that sound down completely. This is just a 2-pole low-pass filter. And there's currently no resonance on this sound, so let's give it just a little bit of resonance by default. Maybe 12. Yeah, that's nice. Now what let's do is let's get some modulation happening on this cutoff here. I'm going to hold LFO1, and I'm going to touch the cutoff so that we've assigned that to LFO1. Then I'm going to turn LFO1 on by double tapping it here and turning it on. Here we can adjust the amount of the LFO so we can really start hearing, what it's actually doing to that filter. We can adjust the time. We can sync it to our tempo if we want and do like interesting stuff. Right? Now if I give that just a subtle amount of LFO, do you hear how we're wobbling the sound just a tiny little bit in the, you know, in the filter cutoff? And we can make that, you know, really dramatic, right? Maybe sound like feature bass kind of stuff. Or we can make it really subtle, to where we don't really hear it much at all. And we could, you know, pick a spot where we like it, the amount of that sort of wobble. Or, and this is something that I love to do, we can automate the amount of LFO1. So this knob here that tells it how much of this, I can actually assign another LFO to that knob, so that this knob is sort of moving as well. And sometimes we're going to get more wobble, and sometimes we're going to get less wobble. Let's go ahead and try to pull that off. Hey, what's happening, Millidoon? Thanks for tuning in. All right. What I'm going to do here is really simply, I'm just going to grab LFO2, and we're going to use the target wheel here. And it's turned off by default. I'm going to double tap it, and the light will come on, and now LFO2 is turned on. Now, let's see here. What I want to do is I want to assign LFO2 to the amount of LFO1. Okay, now we used LFO1 to create that wobble, and I'm using LFO2 to now adjust the amount of wobble per se. Now, what we need to do is we need to set like the waveform for LFO2 to be moving a little bit slowly so that we don't get too much back and forth on that wobble. Let's get that set up. See, now if I turn the amount up, you can really hear what I'm talking about. You can hear that wobble kind of coming and going. And if I set the rate of this maybe down to like, oh, I don't know, maybe 4 bars or something, synced with our tempo, do you hear how when the chords hit, that they sort of get more wobbly as it holds the chord now? It's not like a full wobble from the beginning, but yet we're sort of, the longer the note holds, the more pronounced that filter wobble is. And how we can, you know, how we can adjust that is we just change the amount now of LFO2. So we can have a lot of that if we want, or we can have just, you know, a little amount of that if we want. I think it sounds pretty darn good right about there. So let's go ahead and save what we've got so far at this time. I'm going to save, and I want to put this one into this slot here and save. Fantastic. All right. That's starting to sound pretty good. And what I think we could do is I think that we could still further automate this cutoff knob to move a little bit slowly. So sometimes we kind of open up the chord and see how I'm moving it really slow, and sometimes we kind of close down that chord, right? It'd be neat if there was an invisible hand just sort of moving that cutoff knob slowly in addition to the little wobble we have. And we can do that by assigning LFO3 to that. If I just hold LFO3 down and I wiggle the cutoff knob, now it knows that I've assigned LFO3 to the cutoff. If I double tap LFO3, we can turn it on. And what I'd like is maybe this to be synced, or maybe not synced to tempo, and just really slow. We can sort of hear what it's doing as we crank this amount up. Okay. We can hear the speed of the LFO being affected here, and I want it to be a lot slower. And it's just slowly opening up that filter for us now, but quite a ways, and I want it to be not that dramatic. So I'm taking the amount of LFO3 down just a little bit. So now, not only are we kind of wibbling and wobbling that cutoff, but we're also sort of moving it back and forth very slowly. I'm gonna bring that amount up. And sort of gently opening that filter up every now and again. There we go. Just trying to really subtly fine-tune these so that we can hear it just sort of gently fading in and out and opening up that filter. For those of you who are just tuning in, just want to reiterate that there are no effects inside of the Medusa, and I'm just adding the Eventide black hole today, so we get a little bit of extra, texture. If I turn that off, our sounds are just a little bit more dry, but I really think just a little bit of the black hole goes a long way in like a sound design session. If I was sampling this out now, like the individual chords, we might, drown it in a reverb and make some really big chord samples, for example. But we're just using the black hole today to add a little bit of extra, texture and life to the sounds that we're programming. I still have 2 LFOs available and some more envelopes available. So even though that there is some movement on the sound now, we could still get a little bit more modulation and movement happening. And that might be a fun thing to do. I really like to utilize, as much of the, LFOs and stuff in my patches for movement in the sound and changes in the timbre. I like to do that as much as we can. So let's do that. There's a lot of things that we could assign another LFO to. One of them that might be neat would be maybe just like the volume of a couple of these oscillators here. If I if I just hold the LFO down, maybe I choose oscillator 3 as something I'd like to automate. Maybe I just turn this LFO on, and maybe we bring the volume down a little bit by default on oscillator 3 so that it has a little bit of movement available to it volume-wise, so we could have this LFO sort of gently moving the volume of one of our oscillators, back and forth, but so that our sound is just evolving that much more. Let me play the patch. We'll put the amount up here. So now we can sort of hear that other tone sort of coming in and out, right? But I don't want it like really fast like that. In fact, maybe we'll sync this to tempo and make this like 2 bars, a 2-bar LFO. And maybe I'll just put a very, very gentle amount of this, maybe like 25. So it's just very subtly moving the volume of oscillator 3. Maybe something else that we could do would be to utilize this 5th LFO here, this last LFO, on the 3rd analog oscillator, which is now, moving up and down in volume. Maybe we could assign the LFO to the fine-tuning of that oscillator so that it's moving just a little bit and evolving. If I hold down the LFO, and then I move the fine-tuning of oscillator 3 here, we can turn this LFO on and crank the amount up. Yeah, that's really subtle, and I'm liking that. That's what I want. A little bit of subtle movement goes a long, long way in giving your patches that life and that interest. So here we've got just all of our LFOs working now. I'm going to add a little bit more reverb to that sound. Yeah, I really like the way that this is sounding. It's very mellow. Be a nice sound for chill out. Yeah. Okay, we're going to go ahead and save this patch now. All right. Let's see here. What do you guys think we should call a patch like this? It's kind of a chord patch. It's kind of a happy patch. Maybe a melancholy patch with that 3rd chord in there. If you've got an idea for a name for this patch, go ahead and just drop it in the chat. Yeah, I really like the way this is sounding. We could really drown it in that reverb if we wanted to. Oh yeah. I think the black hole reverb specifically adds just a delicious texture. I really, really like the texture that it brings to the reverb. All right, but it's not about reverb today specifically, so we'll turn that down just a little bit. Just need to come up with a nice name for this one. Any suggestions in the chat? No suggestions in the chat. All right. Well, we're going to come back to that maybe off stream. I just got to come up with a name. But as long as I've labeled it that there's a patch there, we should be good. I think we're going to call that patch done for now. And maybe what I would like to do then would be to try to create like a synth arpeggio of some kind. And let's see here. How we will go about that is we can go ahead and just load up sort of my default initialized patch here. And let's see here. We can bring all the levels of the oscillators down, maybe except for yeah, let's bring up the digital oscillator this time, which will allow us to access the wave tables and not just, you know, the saw, square, triangle, and sine waveforms, but some more complex waveforms inside of the Medusa. What let's do is, let's see here. Why am I not hearing that? Oh, see, I want to be in mono mode. Cool. So now all we're hearing is just the digital oscillator, number 1. And so if I make sure that I'm on the digital oscillators by highlighting this little button here, now I can affect that waveform. It's like, so we have like, you know, a saw, we have like a square, like a triangle. Turn the reverb down quite a bit here. Nice triangle, really low. And then a sine, really low as well, but I can go higher on that. You know, but if we go one more click and we highlight all of those, now I'm actually assigned it to the wave table, and I can use this wave table position knob down here to scroll through different timbres of whatever wave table we have loaded. Okay, and we can select the wave table that we're working with, and that's what we're going to do first on this new patch here, is we're going to scroll down here to wave table. There are 64 wave tables that come with the Medusa, so we can just maybe just start scrolling through these. I'm going to check wave table 1 here. It's like there's a whole, I like also when we scroll with the wave table knob that we get a visual representation of what is happening over here on the right. So what we're getting inside of this first wave table isn't like a smooth morphing wave table, but a whole bunch of individual and unique and different timbres and shapes. So basically this is like adding a whole bunch of different, you know, single cycle type of shapes. They're all different. They have their own, you know, unique timbre. And this is just one, you know, one wave table. It's a nice sort of like organ tone in that. If I go, let's see, if I go to, no, let's just leave it for now. Okay, stop trying to do too much there, Teen. Okay, cool. So let's just continue scrolling through some wave tables until we find something that we'd like to actually work with. This one is like that first one. It's got a whole bunch of like single cycle shapes in it, basically. Let's go ahead and work with this one for now. This sounds pretty nice. Cool. All right, this is wave table number 2, and I'm going to go ahead and select that. I'm just going to select which of these cycles I want to work with here, because we're not going to do a lot of modulation to this wave, because it, isn't really necessarily meant to be, scrolled through or morphed through, but more to be used as like an individual single cycle type of wave form. That sounds pretty good. Let's go ahead and go with that one for now. And let's see here. What I want to do is, let's go ahead and change this amplitude shape just a little. Right on. And maybe we can change the octave of this as well. No, maybe we'll just leave it back here then. Cool. Let's go ahead and change the scale to F minor pentatonic. We're going to go to scale, and we're going to scroll down here to pentatonic minor, and then I can go down and we can select the root note, and I can select I'm going to go ahead and select F2, and that's put us in the key now of F pentatonic minor. And all we need to do is, I'd like to have the layout a little bit different than this, so we can change that. The white notes are the root note here, and you can just sort of pick whatever layout you want. I find this layout is really simple to work with because it's just, visually easy. Just up in the octaves this way. Cool, let's go with layout 5, and let's go ahead and put a little bit of filter envelope on this sound. Cool, put a little bit more of the black hole reverb on here. Just a tiny little bit so that we can hear a little bit of texture, because certainly when I would use a patch like this, in a track or in a live jam or something, I would be running it through some, type of pedal or some type of effect. All right. Ooh, patch name, Cappuccino. I love it. Grant, that's fantastic. We're going to go with that. Chords, that's Cappuccino. Is that 2 P's in Cappuccino? I believe it is, right? Yes. Thanks, Grant. I really appreciate that. That's a fantastic name. All right. So what I want to do is I want to sort of come up with some sort of a melodic pattern that we can punch in here for this sequence. Maybe I don't necessarily want to create a 4-bar sequence to begin with, so maybe we'll adjust the sequence length at this time, and we can maybe just bring that down to a 16-step sequence, so just a 1-bar sequence to start us off with. And again, by default, the sequence mode is gonna, play forward, so no worries there. Just trying to create some sort of like a melody in my head here that I can sort of repeat now. So this may, oh wait, I think we need to clear the grid before I start. So if I go into the grid mode and I go into the recording mode and I hold and clear, now I can roll the dial down to clear all steps. Fantastic. I always forget that I kind of need to do that first. One of the strange anomalies I find about the Medusa is that there's no initialized patch function. There's no like go into the menu and click initialize and everything just zeroes out. There isn't that. There's no way to get to like an initialized like default state. So what I've done is I've just kind of created a patch that's just as default as I could make it, and then I just kind of save that into an empty slot, and I load that every time to start with, and then start saving that into a new slot. It's not a really big deal, but I certainly wish that they would have put an initialized patch function inside of this. Cool. So we've got our sequence length set to 16, right? Good deal. And I've cleared out the sequence. Now if we exit grid mode and we're just in the regular play mode, if record is flashing and I start punching in notes, it's going to record those in, one step at a time. But I'm not really sure what I'm doing yet. Just just something really basic, I guess, for now. I'm going to go ahead and hit record, and I'm going to try to play in some notes here. And let's see what that sounds like when we play that back. Cool, let's go ahead and bring the tempo up on this patch up to more like, you know, a techno style tempo, maybe like 125 for now. All right. Adjusting the envelope a little bit here. That sounds pretty good. Checking in with the filter envelope now. All right. I like the way it sounds when we move the cutoff knob as this patch just kind of, you know, plays away. So I think we're going to go ahead and assign an LFO to the cutoff, to the filter cutoff here. We're going to just hold down LFO1 and we're just going to scroll, you know, the cutoff knob so that it assigns that to LFO1. I'm going to double tap that and we're going to turn that on. Now I can play it and start adjusting these, you know, settings. To bring up the amount. I really like to go for the amount first so that we can really hear, you know, what we're actually doing with the sound. And that can help us choose like a waveform. Want to get creative maybe. And maybe I'll sync this to our tempo. And if we maybe put that to 16th notes, you can hear we've really affected what the patch is sounding like now. Without it, and with it. No, I don't really care for that. So I'm just going to make that pretty slow, I think. All right. And now I'm going to get another LFO to slowly roll the filter like I'm doing now. All right, we're going to take LFO2, and I'm going to also assign that to the cutoff. I'm going to double tap it to turn it on. We're going to maybe set that to like a 4-bar sync. Maybe I need to sync off on this actually, yeah. Yeah, so I've got the amount all the way up so I can really hear what it's doing to the filter. I don't want it to, you know, go down as low as that. So I'm going to move the amount so that it's not as much. But I like the speed, the rate that we're moving. So I just need to set the amount here so that the LFO goes down as low as we want, but not too low, a little more. Going to add a little more reverb to this patch at this time. Yeah, that's what I want. Do you hear? Turn the reverb down. How we can really hear it go down low and then sort of start opening up that filter. Maybe a tiny little bit more, just a tiny little bit more, closing that filter. And also maybe the tiniest little bit slower movement on this. Here we go. I want that nice slow opening and closing of the filter here. Just adjusting the amount of filter envelope here, trying to get that sound just ever so, you know, smoothed out when it goes down low. Yeah, I like the way that that sounds. Let's go ahead and save this at this time. I believe our first open patch is the fourth one, 1, 2, 3, 4 on row 2. Cool. And I'm going to label this on my chart that this is an ARP preset. If anybody thinks of a name for the patch that we are programming currently, just drop that in the chat. I'd really appreciate that. What we can do here, though, is we're currently only using one oscillator out of all 6 oscillators. So there's, you know, quite a bit more, you know, timbre that we could add to this sound by bringing in another oscillator and try to thicken it up maybe just a little bit. Maybe we could use one of the analog oscillators at this time. If I click out of digital and start bringing up the level of our analog oscillator number 1, sort of start hearing what that's doing to the sound here. It's a saw waveform now. We can change the waveform on that. There's a square waveform. I really like what that does to the sound. Bringing that down quite a bit in relation to, you know, our main oscillator here, so that it's just sort of thickening up the sound a little bit. And I think also for a tiny little bit more, you know, movement on the sound, that we could affect the volume of oscillator 1, the analog oscillator here, very, very subtly. If I hold down LFO3 and I just move the slider here, I've now got this LFO assigned to this, you know, fader, and I can turn the LFO on by double tapping it. And we can adjust the amount so we can really hear what that's doing, right? You can hear how that's bringing that, you know, fader up and down in volume, right? Hear that? We can adjust the speed at which it's moving that knob, and I want it slow. And I want it subtle. I don't want it moving all the way up and down, you know, just really, really, really subtle. I'm going to put our LFO amount at like 20. And then we'll just listen to the patch for a second. Since we brought in a square wave, we could actually mess with the pulse width modulation of that square wave as well. And I think that might be a neat thing to add a little bit of movement to. So if I hold LFO4 down, I can scroll this knob here, the pulse width modulation knob. Then I can just turn this LFO on. And if I turn the amount up, like all the way, hopefully we can start hearing what that LFO is doing, you know, as we, you know, moving this pulse width modulation knob. Yeah, we can really hear that movement there. I'd like it to be a lot slower, and maybe we'll sync it to the tempo. Maybe just a little bit at like a quarter. It's synced to tempo, and I've got it on a quarter note now. And I can bring the amount down, again, to a really low number, just 15, a really small amount. So now we're just very, very gently moving this pulse width modulation knob and getting just that tiny little bit more of like evolution and movement in the timbre of the sound as it plays out. All right. Here's our analog oscillator number 2. If we bring the octave up on that, yeah. So that really thickens up the sound. It also kind of changes the vibe of the sound, you know, because it's a higher pitched octave. So this might be nice if we were to add this in very subtly and get a little bit of movement happening on this tone as well using the 5th LFO. So if I just hold that down and then I move the fader here, we've now assigned this fader to the LFO. I can turn the LFO on by just double clicking it, right? And then we can hear, how much we're affecting it by cranking up that amount knob. Now we can hear this coming in and out, right? We can hear how fast it's coming in and out. We can maybe sync it to our tempo. And what I'm trying to do here with this extra little bit of modulation on these timbres is just help the sound like evolve a little bit. You figure if someone is going to be playing this sound, through a full track or whatever, then it's going to be like 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes of this sound playing. So as much of a little bit of, evolution and, timbre manipulation that we can get in the sound, I think all that much better. I'm going to go ahead and save that at this time. I think we can pretty much call this particular patch done. That's a great question. We got a question, is there oscillator sync? There is oscillator sync. We have two oscillator syncs down here at the bottom, actually. Sync 2 syncs oscillator 1 and 2, and then I believe sync 3 syncs like either all the oscillators or 1 and 2, 2, 3. I'm not exactly sure about that. We've also got like built-in FM movement on these oscillators. So we can get pretty jiggy with it. With some FM. A little goes a long way. We can also FM the filter. How do we do that? There we go. I'm not exactly sure what that's doing, to be honest with you. But yes, we do have two different kinds of sync. Let's go ahead and turn these on and see if anything happens. Not a whole lot being affected in this particular patch. Let's go ahead and save that for now. All right. Let's see here. How much glide would I put on that? That's a great question. And let's see what the glide does to this patch here. It's by default, there's no glide between the notes, and if we start turning this up, it immediately, starts doing really heavy glide. We can get really crazy with it. Almost to the point where there's so much glide that there's no glide, right? Or we can get it really rubbery. Or maybe just a tiny little bit of glide, like 2. I like the way that sounds. I'm going to save that into the patch. Hey, what's happening, Original Synth? This particular Medusa that I have to answer the question from Original Synth, I do believe that Polyend have now discontinued the manufacturing of the Medusa. This isn't the original Medusa. The original Medusa had like a different screen on it. This is like more plain looking and more, I don't know, like less more tamed down font, I believe, on this one, but the inside is the same as the other Medusa, if I'm not mistaken. Cool. So let's go ahead and consider that arpeggio patch done there. I like the way that sounds. Yeah. Got that movement built in that I really like. Cool. What let's do is go ahead and load up my sort of initialized patch here. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to try to make a patch that has some movement on the individual grid steps. Now, when we're making a pattern, and we're using the steps, we can actually adjust each step individually if we want to get jiggy with it, to where we could actually have like almost a completely different sound on every single step itself. And I haven't done a lot of exploring with this yet, so this is going to be a great time to check that out, I believe. We're going to go ahead and turn all the volumes on our oscillators down. Okay, we're going to start with, turn this reverb down, and we're going to start with just the analog. No, let's start with just the digital oscillator, and let's see here. Why don't I hear that? Because I'm in the wrong mode. No. Yes, there we go. Cool. Okay, so I want to make sure that I'm in the mono mode, which we are, and then I want to make sure that I'm only hearing digital oscillator 1, which we are. No, we're not. Oh, I see, because I'm on a saw. What I want to do is click this over to wave table, light up all of the lights above the waveforms here, and now we're on the wave table mode. Yeah, fantastic. Cool. So what we can do is we can go ahead and choose a wave table to work with for this particular sound. I'm just going to scroll, let's go all the way to the end and see what number 64 sounds like. Nice little formant wavetable there. I like that one. Interesting timbres happening. And again, we can see what's happening on the wavetable over here on the display as I, as I scroll through the waveform. Let's check out wavetable number 62. This one doesn't really morph smoothly. But it does have some nice timbres in it. Alright, let's check out wavetable 61. They all have a slightly different vibe to them. A lot of formant sounds so far in the ones we're checking out. Kind of like this for a bass. I know I was trying to do some sort of an arpeggio, but when something starts to kind of, jump out of me, I'll typically, take that side trip. I think we could make an interesting bass patch out of this tone. I really like the way that this tone sounds, and I think the filter movement on this is pretty nice as well. So what we could do is we could assign an LFO to the cutoff here by holding the, our first LFO and then just moving the cutoff. We can turn this on, and I can sync this to our tempo. And what I'd like to do would be to maybe 3/16. Is that what I'm looking for? I'm putting the amount up. Hear how we get that sort of almost bounce in the sound there? Since there's not a lot of high frequency content in this particular wavetable, I think we end up with sort of a nice tone for a bass here. And what I can do, let's make sure I'm sending enough volume to the stream. It looks all right. Let me know if there's not enough volume, guys. And let's see. I'd like to affect the envelope on this sound just a little bit. Maybe bring our release up. Get an interesting little clicky on it when we start adding the filter envelope. Go ahead and add the reverb back in. Just a little bit of texture here. Cool. So what we've got here is we've got one oscillator only. And what would be neat is maybe as if we could layer this with a second oscillator. What happens if we start bringing in the second digital oscillator? And the third. The third one is kind of by default, I believe, set to sort of like a bass tone. I really like what that's doing there. Getting a tiny little bit more growl on our sound with this third digital oscillator because it is detuned by 1 octave. So it's kind of acting like a sub underneath our main frequency. We get a really sort of a more growly sort of bass tone here. What I'd like to do is see if we can maybe add in one of our analog oscillators to this patch in like a subtle fashion. If we do that, I can bring in just a tiny little bit of maybe high frequency there, maybe 1 octave lower still. I just want the tiniest little bit of layer of it with our main timbre here. A little bit more of that filter movement on the LFO for us. Yeah, that sounds nice and it's pretty usable, kind of just as is. So rather than, fuss with that sound for like a really long time, I'm just going to save that into the next available slot, which I believe is this one right here. And I'm going to use my chart to label that there's a bass in that slot there. And give that a name at another time. Cool. So we've got a nice chord patch that we put together. Let me just make sure we save that. Oops, save that into here, save, cool. Okay, so we started out with an arpeggio patch today that I was having some difficult getting into the envelopes, so I'm going to pass on that one for now. But then we created this nice chord patch. Let's go back and listen to that real fast. Whoa. I like those chords. And then let's see here. We've got an arpeggio after that we put together. Ooh, yeah, that's really usable. Chewy. A lot of modulation. You could really just drop a 4 on the floor kick there. And then let's see, what else did we create today? We created the bass, which was doesn't have a pattern yet, but just the bass. Maybe what we could do is go ahead and try to program some sort of a bass part here. It'd be nice if we could maybe get this bass sound to like hold in the pattern rather than just play every 16th note. I haven't done that yet, so I'm not exactly sure how that works. Let's see if we can make that happen. Let me just make sure we're saved in case I screw something up. And then let's see, if we go to the grid and I go into the record mode and clear out the grid by going hold and clear, and then rolling down to clear notes all steps and let go. Now the grid is clear and I can sort of save this patch with a clear grid. Cool. Now, if we exit grid mode and go back into play mode, I can, what I need to do actually is set up our scale, I suppose, so that I can come up with a part to play. So let's go ahead and put this into F pentatonic minor. That is my favorite key to write in. And I definitely want to be able to use, some of these patches in my, future tracks and whatnot. So by writing the patches in my favorite key, that just makes it all that much more easy, if you get my drift. We can go down to the root note, and I can change this from C2 to an F2. Cool. Now we're in the key of F pentatonic minor. I can change the layout of the pads here so that it's just really straightforward to look at, and then we can save this patch again. What might be neat though is, like I said, if we could get this to actually hold out instead of just playing, you know, individual 16th notes. Let's try that. Let's see if I was to go. Ah, boy, I'm not exactly sure how to do this. So let's see here. I want the first note, I guess, to be that, but then like maybe the second note to come in on the fourth one, and maybe it would just be like I don't know, this one, and then maybe on this one here, maybe that one, and then maybe on this one here, maybe this one, and maybe we could try to see if I can get some notes that are tied together. Now, what I want to do is let's see here. The layout, right? Come on. Oh, because I'm in record mode. That's why. There we go. Okay. So now, okay, cool. It knows that I put these notes in, although I definitely wanted that one to be one step to the left for sure. So this is a really neat and easy thing about the grid mode, is that we can copy and paste any of the notes inside of the grid mode that we want by just holding the note down. Now it says copied, and I just tap the pad that I want it to go to, and now it's copied that note onto the next, you know, pad to the left. If I want to get rid of that note that I put in the wrong place, I can actually just hold down a blank pad until it says copied, and then I can tap another pad and just kind of copy and paste a blank pad over that. Now, if we leave the record mode and I press play, okay, we can hear that none of these notes are like holding out. They're just, you know, playing, not sustaining. And what I want is, we want the sequence mode to just be 16, the sequence length rather, to be just those 16. So we'll set our sequence mode to 16. Now I can go up here and change the tempo to like a more, you know, techno-friendly tempo or something. Let's try 122. And now we've got these notes, but again, they're not holding. It's not like holding the note, it's just tapping the note. And I'd like it to hold a note, like tie together. And if I'm not mistaken, let me go ahead and actually save, because what we've got so far is what we want. And I'm not sure if this is going to work or not. If I hit record mode, and then I just hit all three of these, or no, maybe if I hold this one, and then I was doing it before. How did I do that? There was a way that I was tying notes together. Did I get it in real time almost? Hold on. Or did I just screw it up? Yeah, I've just screwed it up, basically. Okay, no worries. That's why I saved before we did that. So now I can just load that patch back up again, right? Cool. Yeah, so I'm going to need to re-look that up, how to do the tying the notes together thing. Hey, what's up, Sky Tortoise Ferryman? Thanks for tuning in. All right. And boy, I wish I could remember how to do that. I did it by accident earlier in the week, and I was thinking, yeah, we gotta get that in. But no worries. That's something that I can get back to at another session. Let me just play the patch here. Might be neat then if maybe we had, oh, I don't know, more notes in this. So maybe what we could do would be to go back into record mode and then just pop a few more notes into the pattern. Maybe just arbitrarily kind of a thing. And see what that does. Trying to get a little bit more of an interesting pattern because we're not actually tying those notes together. All right. Messing with the filter envelope here. Yeah, nice and kind of subdued like that. I like that. Yeah, just kind of, by default, a little bit of filter movement would be really nice on this sound. So if I assign LFO2 to that, and then we, crank up the amount so we can really hear what that's doing, we can make the rate slower, like quite a bit slower, and then we can turn the amount down so it's not so dramatic. Just a little bit of extra movement on that filter cutoff there. Just enough so we can hear some change in the timbre of the sound. Hey, what's happening, Dennis? All right. Maybe what we could do here would be to add in another oscillator to this sound. Looks like we did that already with 1 and 3. Let me just readjust that. Yeah, just a little bit of that one. Yeah, I like the way that sounds. All right. Just adjusting the filter envelope a little bit and taming that sound a tiny little bit more. Adding a tiny little bit of tiny little bit of timbre here from digital oscillator 2. Yeah, I like the way that sounds. Let's go ahead and save that. All right. Let's see here. What time is it? It's about 11:26, so we've been going for about an hour and a half. I'd like to try to do like one more patch today before we wrap it up. I wish we had gotten a little bit further on that first patch, though. But we have a successful chords patch, we have a successful ARP patch, and kind of a successful bass patch, ARP patch here. So maybe we could create like another chords type of patch before we call it today, because again, I really am looking to create some new chords that I can resample into some new projects. So what we can do is we can load up sort of, again, the sort of default state here that I've been working with. And cool. If I bring this into polyphonic mode, whoa, that's loud. Okay, cool. Now I can try to bring up another one of these chord progressions that I have put together. Yeah, that sounds great. All right, so let's go ahead and put this together. For those of you who might have missed it, I'm using a software on Ableton over here from Plugin Boutique, and it's called Scalar 2, and I've used that to put together some chord progressions in the last few days, and this is one of them. And so let's go ahead and punch that into this new patch that we're creating. What I want to do is I just need to make sure that we are not in a scale mode, so that whatever notes I put in, it doesn't try to snap them to a scale. And let's see here. If I go into the grid mode, I want to clear out this information here. I can go make sure we're in record, and I can just go hold and clear. Then I roll down to where it says clear all steps. We can get that cleared at this time. Let me go ahead and save that actually into my sort of default patch, the grid cleared out. Cool deal. Now what we can do is go out of grid mode and make sure that we're in record mode. And I just want to put these 4 chords in. So I'm recording, and we're on the very first step. So I'm going to hit the MIDI, the MIDI is triggering the chord there. I'm going to scroll this to like a bar later, and on the beginning of bar 2, we're going to drop that second chord. And then on the beginning of bar 3, we're going to drop the third chord. And then on the beginning of bar 4, we're going to drop that 4th chord. And now I've recorded all 4 chords in here. And if I play it back, There are those chords, right? I love that we can do, polyphonic sequencing like this and actually get like a full chord progressions, up to 6 notes of chords in here. What I'm going to do is just play this back now. And we're going to adjust the tempo up from 83 to maybe, something a little bit more realistic, like 120 something. Let's go 125 for now. Cool. And we can go ahead and start affecting the envelope of our patch. See, I kind of like that. Maybe bring the release up a little more. Do you guys hear that little tiny bit of, that little bit of like filter wobble that we're getting on the cutoff? Because I assigned the LFO to that already. Again, we could crank that. We could crank that up, We could even affect the speed of that differently. Right? And if I bring this down, now we're sort of getting that, that really cool filter wobble that I like so well. And what we can do is maybe make that subtle and do what we did before, which was assign another LFO to affect how much of that wobble is actually happening. So if I select LFO 2 and turn it on, and then I just go to the target and I select LFO 1 amount, now I can control how much of that wobble is happening, and I can sort of, bring it in and out. We can change this to a synced LFO and put this on like a 4-bar rate so that it's just going to really slowly affect how much of that wobble is happening. And we want this to be slow. We don't necessarily need like super wobble chords. So we just want to bring this down and make it mellow just so we can hear it affecting, that filter subtly. Or if you want it, really dramatic, then you would just have more, of this effect, more of this LFO amount. Just trying to bring these down a little bit because the LFO is moving them, So I just want to get it right in that sort of sweet spot. I'm going to add a little bit more reverb to these chords now. Right? You really can't go wrong with the Eventide black hole. It's really easy for me to just overdo it, because it's just magic. But I'm going to bring it down so it's not too dramatic as we're just, creating these. That's sort of the beauty, though, of a synthesizer that doesn't have effects built into it, though, is that if you've got some pedals, then you can really, utilize those in how you're actually designing your sound. When I was, if I was using these sounds, I would definitely not be using them dry. I would be using effects of some kind, and depending on what we choose, that has an impact on the sound. Let me just make sure that we're saving this patch where it goes, and let's see, so it's the third one here, and I'm going to write down that this is another chords patch as well. All these will need names, but I can do that at a different session unless somebody's got an interesting name for this sound right here. Just drop that in the chat. Okay. I'm not sure what the landlord stab is, flip mode. I'm actually not that versed with like a lot of the music of today, as it were, and I'm actually not 100% versed with like all the music of the past either. We need a little bit more movement happening on this still. Yeah. Maybe what we need is a little bit of casual detuning on some of these oscillators that we're using. So if I go to the analog oscillators and start detuning these a little bit from each other, maybe and we can get a little bit more of a thicker type of sound here. We do that same thing with the digital oscillators. This is a lot of the same thing we did with the last, chords preset. Just to try to get those a little bit more, beating off of each other in an, interesting way. Yeah. These two, so basically each oscillator is playing, a different note in the chord. So if I adjust the volume on these oscillators, what we're actually doing is it's almost like we're adjusting the velocity of that note that's playing in the chord itself. So we can use these LFOs on the volume of our oscillators just to get that much more movement in the sound. So if I take an unused LFO and I just assign that to the volume here of our second oscillator. Now if I turn that LFO on and I crank the amount up, we can start hearing what it's doing to the sound. Yeah, see how it's kind of bringing that in strangely. What we can do though is maybe we could sync this. Maybe bring it to like a quarter note and then just bring the amount of this down like a lot to maybe like 25. Just so it's very subtly now moving the volume of oscillator 2. Because when somebody, is hitting chords, they're certainly not going to have all of their fingers hitting the chords at the exact same velocity each time. Let's do that same thing with oscillator 3 here. Let's go ahead and grab our unused LFO 5 and assign it to the volume of oscillator 3. We're going to turn it on. Yeah, we can sort of hear what it's doing to the sound there, but I want it to be very slow. I'm not going to sync this one to tempo so that it's kind of moving at its own, pace per se, making the patch a little bit more organic. And I'm going to do this really subtly as well, as we're just going to put the LFO to an amount of 22. So very subtly now, we're sort of just moving the velocity of these two, notes, because again, each note in the chord is being played on a different oscillator. I really like the way that this is sounding here, and we're going to go ahead and save this one at this time. Oops, I saved it back into my default initialized patch by accident there, and that was definitely a mistake. So what I want to do is to put it here instead and save. Cool. All right. Let's see here. How long have we been going? Almost 2 hours today. Let's see here. Trying to decide if we want to try to do like one more patch today before we call it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, let's try that. Let's try that. I have an idea for a patch where we could do like just a very simple 3-note chord, but then maybe program some filter movement into the sequence so that it plays back with some interesting tempo synced filter movement. Let's see if we can make that happen. One more patch today. One more patch today. Let me go ahead and load up what I was sort of considering my original like default empty patch, and I want to put that into polyphonic 1 mode here. Let's see here. Why am I not hearing anything yet? There we go. Okay, cool. So what I want to do then is I want to go ahead and put us into the scale mode of pentatonic minor. And we're going to just scroll down and choose pentatonic minor. And then I'm just going to change this root note from a C to an F2. And now we are writing in the key of F pentatonic minor. I can really quickly just change this layout again. Whoops, layout to this one, which is a lot easier for me to work with. And cool. Put our volume down just a touch there. Cool. This is like a minor, F minor chord here. And so basically, if I want to put in something on the grid, looks like I've already cleared the grid, so we don't need to do that. What I need to do is exit grid mode, so we're in play mode. And then, what am I going to use? Yeah, or is it? Yeah, that one. So I'm just going to hit record now, and let's go, let's put this chord in here. And then I also want to put it in, I think here, and then is it here, and then also here. And then I think I want to change our sequence to a 2-bar sequence for now. So let's do that. Let's go to sequence length and make that just 2 bars for now. All right. And then if I play the pattern, what do we got here? All right, let's go ahead and change this tempo up to something a little bit more, you know, house friendly. Put this up to like 120 for now. Cool. And maybe what we could do would be to put a little bit more reverb on this, because I'm trying to create some sort of like a, you know, a dub chord type of sound. Bring the volume up a little bit here. All right. And yeah. Trying to add a little bit of resonance to the sound, just a very small amount, maybe like 5, 8, doesn't really matter. Let's go into the amplitude envelope here. Ooh, that started to be what I'm looking for. I want to bring the attack on that envelope just to the smallest increment that I can, so just like 1. Yeah, that's nice. Bring up the reverb on that, you know. Now, let's go ahead and save this before I go any further, so then if I screw it up or something, that we still got that. And we're going to put this into, I believe, this patch here. Save this patch here. Save. Cool. Okay, and then so, yeah, I'm in there. Good deal. And load. And, yeah, cool. I'm always messing with this envelope is the thing. I have a hard time getting it like exactly where I want it, and it's kind of finicky, I find. Okay, let's go ahead and put a little bit of LFO movement on. I know I always do this, but I really like the filter to move. So we're going to go ahead and assign the LFO to the filter cutoff, and we're just going to play this and check out the amount so we can, you know, really hear what it's doing there. I want the speed to be a lot slower. So maybe like 0.12 or something, so that it's really slowly moving. And just gently moving the cutoff on that filter as well. Maybe more. Now I just have to set this so that when it moves it doesn't go down too low. It's just a combination here of the cutoff and the amount of this LFO sort of playing against each other. You can hear how that filter is now opening up really slowly as our chord you know, progression is happening here. It's not really a progression, it's kind of the same, you know, pattern. I've now changed the octave on all 3 of the analog oscillators to 1 octave higher than the digital oscillators, kind of giving a little bit more like spread out feeling and wider feeling to the sound. I think what we can do also is maybe do a little bit of fine tune on these. Very subtle. Do the same thing to these digital oscillators. Really drowned it in reverb if we wanted to. Right, this huge thing. You can turn down the amount of modulation happening on that reverb so that it's more of just that big wall of reverb, you know? Could also, I think, hear a little bit of swing maybe being appropriate to add to this patch. Let's go ahead and add a little bit of swing. Probably not really going to hear the difference so much without a backbeat to hear this too, but just a little bit of swing might push this in a, you know, nice direction. We don't have a lot of modulation on the patch yet, but it's still already doing, you know, I feel quite a bit of movement. Filter up a little more so that it opens up a tiny bit more. Yeah. Hear how it's really, really slow and the movement is dramatic, but it's really, really slow. Just trying to adjust how fast it's moving now, because now I think it's too slow. I've got the rate of this LFO not synced and just set to 0.9, so it's very, very subtle now, and not subtle, but slow, very just slow moving on that filter. Yeah, hear it pulling it way down. We're gonna open it way up now. I still think maybe the tiniest bit faster then, so maybe instead of 0.9, maybe 0.10 on the speed. Yeah, hear it just open up now. So if we had delay on this, that would be really awesome as well. Let's go ahead and save this patch so that I can explore a little bit more with it without fear of messing it up. Let's go ahead and save this, and then I'm gonna label here that this is a chords patch so that I don't accidentally write over it later. Okay. Cool. What I'd like to try to do is if we go into the grid here, we can see our actual notes. And if I hold these, this is one of the, you know, the neat things is in grid mode, we could even like, we can use this as a real-time, you know, playing device if we want. We could put any chords on any pads we want and then just, you know, trigger that live, like finger drumming style if we want. But I want to try some like automation per se. And what I believe we can do is if we're in the record mode and if I just hold the pad that I want to affect, I can move any of these dials over here and just on this one step alone, this is going to be affected. So if I roll the filter down just on this one step to say 30 instead of where it was at originally, maybe I do the same thing with the second one. Maybe I roll this down to 30 as well. Now it should remember that, and when I play the part, it should, you know, move the filter on these two steps, hopefully. Let's see if I did that right. All I need to do is, I guess, tell it that on these steps that it should be back open again. So I'm going to put that open. I've got the record mode on, and on these steps, I'm rolling it. Now, this should be interesting, and I'm not sure if this is like the right thing to do per se, because we've already got the LFO moving our filter, and now I've kind of put some filter movement into it. Let's see what that did. Yeah, that sort of overrides the LFO, I think. and it's not quite what I'm after. This is why I'm definitely a chronic saver, because now I can just, load that patch up again and not, have that uh, extra, modulation built in. But back to our normal, where the LFO was just controlling that filter in a really slow way. Ooh, we got Mr. Gumby considering a Typhon for Christmas. I really, really love the Typhon, and I just need to get some more use out of it. I'd love to, program a bunch more sounds for this as well. There's just only so many hours in the day, if you get my drift. I really like the way that this, just sort of dub chord patch is sounding. My gut is just to start modulating everything, lots of modulation, but I really like the way this is sounding without, a whole bunch of modulation, just that filter movement. Maybe it'd be neat if we assign the resonance to an LFO and get some, really subtle, gentle movement happening on that. What if I make this like a synced LFO to tempo? And then, no, actually, let's unsync that and just have it be really slow as well. Maybe like, I don't know, like 16 hertz. And just a very subtle amount of movement there on the amount of resonance that this sound is getting, just so it changes a little bit more, timbre-wise as it's playing out. It's kind of a slow evolving sound, so that, slow timbre movement is really nice. Yeah, I'm not set for us to do any, adding in drums or anything like that today. Just these sounds from the Medusa. Yeah, I'm really, really happy with the way that's sounding. I don't want to do anything else to that patch. I'm just going to go ahead and save that as it is. All right, so we've been going for just about 2 hours. I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up today. Hopefully, I'm going to spend a lot more time, digging into the Medusa and programming a full bank of 64 patches that I can then release for this and get some more patches out there for this guy. I'm really happy with what I've been able to create so far. I feel like I just need a lot more hours in the day to dig into it. For example, there's 64 different wave tables, and a lot of those wave tables, as we heard just a little while ago, are really nice to be used as just like a single cycle type of waveform. So we really have just hundreds and hundreds of, waveforms and timbres in here that we can sort of coax out. I need to sort of spend a lot of time with those wavetables and find out like maybe what my favorite wavetables are, stuff like that, that I can really, get in and program some more sounds that sort of fit my style per se. I guess before we call it today, if anyone has any questions at all, feel free to drop those in the chat, whether they be, Medusa related or just, music making related in general. And I guess before we call it, I'm just going to play a few of the patches that I've got created here in case anybody missed some stuff at the beginning. I'm still, kind of coming to grips with how to program the Medusa. And this is what I've got so far inside of it. This is like a little arpeggio here. All right, and then what do we got here? We've got like some chords over here. You can drown these in reverb. Almost like a future bass vibe here on these chords. Really bright sounding. All right, we've got another, I believe, chords patch after that one. Yeah, I really like these. Really, because it's got more of a tail, and you can just drown it in that reverb. Again, for those of you who missed the beginning, one of the reasons that I'm really interested in creating a whole bunch of new like chord progression patches right now is I've recently picked up a Roland SP303 vintage sampler, and it has a lo-fi sampling mode in it that I'm hoping to lo-fi sample a lot of these chord progressions out in and get that sort of like lo-fi boom bap like vibe on some of these chords and stuff. Let's see, that's like a Reese bass that I put together that I haven't really quite finalized yet. Give me the stamp. Probably don't want a lot of reverb on that Reese bass. Let's see here. We got another chord patch. Drown this one in reverb. Oh yeah. Laid back, you know. Could do those halftime beats over stuff like this. I really love those halftime beats. All right, what else we got here? We got that cool bass blaster patch. Let's drop the reverb on this. Right, I mean, I could just hear it coming in. Get those open hats over this. Oh my God, forget about it. That one's a fun one for actually playing as well. Because it has that sort of little echo built into it. Super fun. All right, what else we got in here? More chords, yeah. With that little bounce on them. I can hear this kind of coming into a groove already, you know. And we got this cool effect sound here. All right. Again, I can hear a techno, you know, pattern coming out of this in like a second. Cool stuff. All right. We got another arpeggio. I really like the formant type of wavetable sound that I got out of this one. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, come on. That halftime beat. Totally vibe with like a lot of these. All right. That's sort of the failed envelope experiment from the very first part of the stream. I'll get back to you. All right. Then what do we got here? We've got the cappuccino chords. Thanks, Grant. All right. Oh. With that little bit of wobble on the chords, you know. I really like that halftime. But again, once I sample these out, you know, then you've just got a whole, you know, plethora of chords that I can do whatever I want with, like in a sample-based, you know, workflow, which you guys know I love, you know. That cool ARP we made today with a little bit of pulse width modulation. Yeah, I like this one. Really clean sounding because there's not a whole lot of oscillators in this particular sound that we made. All right. Another little arpeggio that we made today. Like a nice break beat over this would be killer. All right, what else did we make today? These cool chords. Those sound great. And then I think one more chords. Yeah, the dubby one. Wow, those are really, really low. A whole different vibe on this, you know, something really slow. Because the chords move so slowly. Oh, love it. I don't really, that's an interesting question. We got Mr. Gumby says, how am I finding playing the grid with the pads being level with like the frame of the unit? If you can't really tell, but these pads are really like pretty flush with, and you can sort of roll like really without much effort at all. I like the pads, really. I haven't had issue with them yet. Yeah, I really like the pads. I think the build quality on this thing is like really solid. It's really metal feeling, and I really like that per se. Um, Definitely. Yeah, the Dean Human drums. Yeah, probably not so much. Probably. Yeah, but just to get an idea of like, kind of what I hear in my head as I'm designing these. All right, cool deal. So it's been just over 2 hours today. Actually, it's been exactly 2 hours today. Fantastic. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me on these live streams, especially, with something like this that I'm kind of just getting into and not like, really like that I don't know inside and out 100%. So, sorry for the anomalies along the way today. And, thanks for hanging out and thanks for the suggestions, everyone. Cool. So until next time, thanks for watching. Take care of each other, everyone, and have a great week. All right. Enjoy the rest of your day. All right.